And I was like,
yes,
we don't even use toilet paper in Indonesia. Like my trip, we were out in the forest and we just, we used buckets of water and all that kind of stuff. So it was like, I'd already prepared for this time. So
I'm good. I've been training. Yeah. But
so
it does, it comes down to perspective, doesn't it?
Yeah.
The understanding that we should be grateful for what we have.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think, I've really enjoyed hearing your story and your journey, and I would imagine that it takes quite a bit of confidence or bravery to put your photography forward to the public eye.
Definitely.
It's an art form.
Yeah.
And I know that if ever someone asks me to draw something or create something, I'm doing it like this because I don't want them to see what I'm doing.
Yeah. Yeah.
How do you overcome that, and how does that feel for you?
It is a little bit scary, and especially because of what I'm sort of shifting my work into now. I think because a lot of the stuff might make me look like I'm like an activist or I'm an environmentalist, or there's like a stigma against people that want to talk out against things. And I think for me, creating beautiful imagery, but also there's always like a side to the story that really needs to be told. And I think it's just really important to really imagine what my audience would be thinking when they read and see these sorts of things, and I have to take that risk because there's things that are a lot bigger than me out there. And like in terms of that, I just mean like there are much more important things that need to be said, and there's much more important things that need to be captured, and people need to see it, and it's, for me, it's like, it doesn't matter what anyone thinks of me, and me putting my opinions out there. Like everyone's got an opinion about something and we all judge things. But I just sort of tell myself all the time that it's a risk that I'm just willing to take all the time, that not everyone's going to like what you have to say, not everyone's going to like what you're doing, and that's just life in general. That goes with everything that you do, and you just have to be like, no, you know what, I'm going to do it because it's right. You have to be a voice for somebody else that doesn't have one. And that's kind of the way I look at it, especially with like documenting somebody or somebody's story. And they sort of, like when I think of like Mike Tavioni, he's very content with the way he lives, and it's beautiful, but it's also, I see how people take advantage of him. And I'm like, and he's very quiet about it. He doesn't talk about it. He doesn't make a big deal about it. And I'm like, no, this needs to be, we need to put this out here. We need people to understand that that's not okay, so, and he always says to me, he's like, I get so scared of you sometimes.
Of you?
Yeah, because I want to be outspoken about it, and I want to go against the grain. I want to say things that people aren't going to like. And it's really just, you really do have to build a shell and like some kind of confidence to be able to do that. And it's not something that just comes like that, but you just really have to force yourself and push yourself to do it. And I think I just remind myself all the time, you know what, that's just life. People aren't going to like you, or people are just going to say things, but you just have to carry on.
Yeah, sometimes they say
things. It's a risk, and you just take it. Yeah.
It's interesting because you're saying how, having the confidence and taking the risk and building that shell. A lot of people are afraid to take a risk and don't because of that fear.
Yeah.
What have you done to build that shell? What is it? Maybe it's your values or something that keeps you going, and no matter what the risk or what the consequence, you'll be all right. How did you build that? How do you?
I think, for me personally, it was probably more like personal experiences that I had been through. Okay. It taught me a lot about how to deal with certain people or certain situations, and even doing weddings, actually. Doing wedding photography, you deal with people all the time.
And high pressure.
Yeah, and high pressure, and you deal with especially people that are going to be like, I don't like that, or I don't want that like that, So you're always put in a situation where you're having to be like, okay, how am I going to deal with this? And you learn from that. You learn from it all the time. And but yeah, for me, it's definitely like the work that I've done and like personal experiences. So things that I've been through in my life, like with my family, with my ex-partner, my daughter's father. I think that situation in general actually taught me a lot about how to deal with things in life. So that sort of, I think because I was always being pushed back with that situation, you know, being a single mom and always being, you know, told you can't do this or you can't do that. I think those sorts of words just didn't fit with me. And it was just like, you know what, I can do whatever I want to and I'm going to. So it was those things that always pushed me and sort of gave me like determination to get somewhere. I was like, yeah, nah, I'm determined and I'm gonna get somewhere, because as soon as someone tells me no, I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna go and I'm gonna prove to you that I can do whatever I want to. Yeah, so it was like personal experiences and like with people and situations that actually taught me, like over time, I sort of built this confidence within myself that sort of, I was like, yeah, no, I'm just going to do what I want to do. And, you know, this is how I'm going to do it. And yeah.
And I love that about you. And I think what's lovely is that you have a very gentle approach. You're not someone that's walking through going, I'm going to do it, get out of my way, I'm doing this. You just go about it because it's important to you and you're passionate about it. But you're gentle. And so it's a really lovely like oxymoron almost.
Yeah, it is a little bit.
But that's great. And I think it's an inspiration to others to see, oh, she's doing what she loves and look at where she's heading and where you're getting to.
Yeah.
And it is, you know, nice for others to go, okay, maybe I should step up and do the things that I dream of or the plans that I've always had sitting over here.
Yeah, I always make sure that I make it really known, not to everyone else, but to myself especially, that whatever I'm doing, there's a purpose for it. You know, I'm not just doing it just because. And there always has to be a purpose, and there always has to be a positive, something, you know, like a positive message in what I'm doing. It's not to attack anyone or, you know, like, or to get under anyone's skin or, you know, whatever I'm doing, it's I'm trying to give back to something that, you know, never gets the time of day, basically. And so I'm always siding with that. And I'm like, yeah.
But I love that. And someone needs to do it.
Yeah.
So you've worked with Mike Tavioni. I do have a little question around, how did you find, you know, how is your relationship with him now, and what did you learn from him in your time together?
I've learnt so much from him. There's definitely not one thing that I've learnt. I've learnt a lot. I've basically learnt things about myself just by being around him, but he's really opened my mind about, you know, how things sort of are in our community and how what our culture is about and what art is. Like, he's taught me so much about art, and he always says to me, he's like, you've taught me a lot about art. And I'm like, but you've taught me a lot about art. So it's just amazing that, like, you know, we're two totally different people and totally different artists, but we've collaborated in this way and we've built this relationship pretty much where, you know, he pretty much calls me like his granddaughter, and he's like my papa now, you know, and he's taught me a lot more about just, taking risks. He has taught me a lot about that, because that's the kind of person that he is.
Taker.
Yeah. And, you know, and everyone sort of, I noticed that people here sort of look at him like he's like, you know, he's crazy, he's a rebel, he goes against everything. And yeah, he does, because that's what he firmly believes in. He believes these things, but he's very, like, he protects his culture and he protects tradition and he protects, you know, what our people, you know, hundreds of years ago had built basically. And I respect him so much for carrying that. And so he's really taught me how to open my mind and find, you know, my purpose in life as well.
And it sounds like you're finding it.
Yeah, definitely.
You talk about art and you talk about culture. Why do you think those two things and traditions, why do you think those items, or not items, what are they? Those things are important to a person's well-being? You know, why is it that we feel a need to be connected to culture or art? What does it do for us as individuals? It's a bigger
I mean,
thought process.
Culture and art, it's kind of like, well, for me, it's like two in the same thing. It's an expression of, you know, who we are and how we feel. And for me, like when I think about my art, it's like I'm trying to express my emotions in some way, or someone else's emotions and their story. And I think it's just, culture and art.
That was a doozy of a question.
Yeah, I was like,
no, the reason I ask is because I'm not from the Cook Islands, and I live in this culture, and I'm learning through your photography, through Mike, through all sorts of wonderful people. And it's really strong here. You know, there's a really strong affinity to the culture, traditional practices. And for me, I'm from Australia and I'm a convict. You know, I don't know my own culture. Australia, it's like, put it on a Barbie, mate, and ride to school on a kangaroo, according to the rest of the world. Yeah. So I've really enjoyed watching the connection and what it means to Cook Islanders and to Polynesians.
I think it's just a way of us being able to express who we are and how we identify with ourselves, you know. For Indigenous or, you know, Polynesians, Melanesians, like everybody, it's like identity is everything. That's how we know like where we've come from and where we belong. And it's really important, especially for like small communities like ourselves, that we keep that really close to us, you know, and art is an expression of that. And our culture is an expression of that. So it's really important that we have kept that alive, or we're trying to keep that alive, you know. So if you know, we don't want to lose that, because then we lose our identity.
And that's what your artwork of Mike, or your photography of Mike, is doing. It's preserving him and the work that he does, the traditional carving, the vakas. It's beautiful. And that's a really important, it's really important to Cook Islanders and to your history. So keep it up. And I had a final question for you. I was just wondering, in the course of your work, is there something, or perhaps it's someone, that's really challenged you? And how have you dealt with them or overcome that situation?
Ooh, really challenged me, like
my mom? No, I'm kidding. That would be my
Who's really challenged me? To be honest, not like in a negative way, or
in any way you want to. I mean, it could be negative. It might be that they've thrown something at you and you've had to process it and then move beyond. Or maybe they've just seen something in you and they've just pushed you as far as you can go.
It would definitely be Danielle, who's the CEO of Photographers Without Borders. She's definitely she's the first person that comes to mind who's basically forced me to up my game mentally, and not through the way I take my photos, but the way I use my language and the way I talk about things and the way I use my storytelling. And so she's the one who's sort of been like teaching me how, you know, how we who've come from, you know, really cultured backgrounds should be, you know, using our language, how we should be talking, and how, you know, when we put up a photo or something, how are we connecting our, you know, captions and making sure that what we're saying is correct. almost. And so she is a constant reminder, like all the time. She's sort of, I'm like really intimidated by her because she's really intelligent. She's so intelligent. And she's extremely educated on everything. Like, she's very analytical. So she'll, be like, well, I know that you've got this, but why? And, so it's like she'll pull you up on something and you're just like, oh my gosh, I never really thought about that, and one thing I learned from her was how to use the language that I use, so it's like, so she would just say stuff like, how we say captivate or shoot or all those things. Do you ever think about where those words have come from? And I'm like, oh my goodness, like I've never thought about that. And it's just like, it's the language that we're using right now is not quite correct. And we probably shouldn't be using that sort of language. As photographers and as filmmakers, that's not what we want to be using. And I'm like, so she's teaching me all of those sorts of things. And
wow.
it opens my mind. It really blows my mind too, that she's really she's doing this. And I'm just like, that's like, it's an amazing thing to actually be learning stuff like that, because there's not many people out there that will say those sorts of things, especially for a photographer or, videographer or something. She's like, yeah, that's kind of not the language that you should be using, because where do you think it actually comes from?
Wow.
Yeah, so it really opens everything up. So
well, you're lucky to have someone like her keeping you in check and
she's
pushing you to your limits.
Yeah, she's pushing me all the time.
Now, I know I said that was the final question, but I don't want to stop. Yeah. No. What's next for you after all of this? And obviously, you'll still work with her, I would assume, with PW.
Yeah.
Photography Without Borders.
Yeah, definitely. So obviously I've got like my own little projects going on the side, especially in this time that we've got where we can't really go anywhere. And but this is like a perfect time for us to sort of revamp our creativity and get deeper into our communities and talk more to people and collaborate more. And so this is like a perfect time to do all of that. So I've got some projects coming up over the next couple months, which I'm really excited about. And I can't wait to get them out. Yeah. And then obviously, so in October this year, I was supposed to be doing an assignment with PWB, which was in Brazil. And so we've had to obviously put that off until next year. So we're sort of pushing that out to like April, May next year. So we'll just see how everything goes on the other side. Fingers crossed. Yeah. And then they really want me to do another 2 assignments as well. And one is in Malawi in Africa, and there's another one in Peru. So
wow.
Yeah, so really just like really amazing stuff. And I get to travel there for 2 weeks, and they sort of organize everything for me. And I connect with NGOs over there and sort of basically document and write up these big stories about what these guys are doing. It's almost kind of like what you do in National Geographic.
Yeah.
But it's going to be for PWB. And so their stuff is getting out more and more, and because she's building this organization, there's more people that know about it. And so it's really cool to be a part of that at the moment. And she's also asked me as well if I was interested in being on the Indigenous Advisory Council in Canada. Wow. So, which is like such a huge thing. And I was like,
and you
really?
Said yes?
I said yes. Yeah. It was really such a privilege to even be asked or even be thought of for something like that. And I feel like she sort of looks at me like there is so much potential in what you're doing and who you are and what you're talking about and you're learning, and we'd love to have you a part of this. So
how many people are on the council?
I don't actually know, but she did say that she was going to ask a few other people, but she approached me first, and she was like, "You're the first person I actually want to ask," and she didn't want to announce it until after the exhibition. So that's when it was planned for, was after we did the exhibition, and I was supposed to do basically like a sit down like this in front of 100 people.
Oh wow! What's good practice?
The exhibition, and talk about this kind of stuff, and then what our plan was for the future going forward. Yeah.
Wow.
So yeah, I feel really, really like super privileged.
I think the journey's only just begun.
Yeah, I definitely feel super positive about it. So I'm just like, keep learning. Yeah, it's just a journey that will never stop. So that's how I sort of look at it.
Oh, well, congratulations on everything you've achieved.
Thank you.
And best of luck.
Yeah.
And I look forward to seeing it all online and hopefully some of it in person. And if you need someone to carry your bags when you go overseas, I'm in. No, but thank you, Alex. And thanks for joining us today.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Thank you.